And Mackenzie.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think it was inadvertent, but the Honourable Speaker used the proper name of a sitting member of Parliament when quoting the former Speaker. I'm wondering if the Speaker wants to clarify the rules with regards to naming the proper name of currently elected members of Parliament.
I stand corrected. I shouldn't have used his name. I should have just used his riding of Regina Capel. The Honourable Member for Thornhill. We'll have to start over. We'll have to continue after the orders of the day here, which is we're going to statements by members. Déclaration de députés.
Statements by members.
Spadina, Fort York.
Madam Speaker, this government has utterly failed to protect our families, our communities, and our nation from extremism. Their inability to curb terrorism and secure our borders is not just a lapse, it is a betrayal of its fundamental duty. To be specific, IRCC bears a significant portion of the blame. Take the recent arrest of a father and son in Toronto before they could execute an advanced stage terrorist plot. The father was in an ISIS video hacking at a prisoner's arms with a sword and yet still given citizenship. Madam Speaker, the government's inaction has created a dangerous vacuum. Their failures have forced civil society, religious leaders, and peace-loving Canadians to stand up. I'm proud to join in these efforts and was honored to assist in the announcements of Toronto as the Global Imams Council Western Headquarters and bear witness to the signing of the Ottawa Declaration. Madam Speaker, I stand with the GIC and all who refuse to bow to hate. The government's abrogation of its duties to protect Canadians must stop. If this government will not act, then we will. Our people deserve better.
Honourable for St. John Rossi.
Madam Speaker, I, like many in this House, was elected in 2015, and for 9 years and over 1,200 nights away from home, I have fought for the constituents of St. John Rossi in this place. I have only been able to do so because I am lucky enough to have the unwavering support of my family. We all know that being away from our families can take its toll. It's what we signed up for. But we know we would miss milestones and memories. Our families, however, did not necessarily sign up for this life. So to our families, I would like to say thank you. I am lucky enough to have my wife Denise, my son Connor, and his partner Anna here visiting Ottawa this weekend. They are up in the gallery. I would also like to thank my son Christian, his wife Emma, and our beautiful new grandchild Jude. Without their love and encouragement, I couldn't do what I do, and I know that all of us in this place would not be here if it was not for our families.
And I'm sure the honourable member, it was a slip, but he knows he's not to mention who might be in the galleries and who's not. The honourable member for West Nova.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Every word spoken in the House of Commons is recorded, transcribed, edited, translated, and published to the highest standards of a long and proud Hansard tradition. For 8 parliaments, Bruce Young has been the chief caretaker of these words. And today we celebrate his accomplishments as he will soon retire after 26 years in the House of Commons. Chef de publication parlementaire depuis 21
Leader of the parliamentary publications for 21 years, Bruce has a great team, and they've been able to overcome many challenges despite everything happening in our world. The Hansard is on our offices, on our tables at 6 a.m. every morning. So he has published more than 2,600 Hansards, and more than 22,000 committee meetings were inscribed in these. And the first speech in Indigenous language was recorded in these, and as well as the same hybrid.
His team to achieve the impossible on a daily basis. He will be missed, but we wish him a happy retirement, playing hockey, chopping wood, and above all, spending time with family. Yeah.
And I'll take this moment to wish Bruce a happy retirement as well. The honourable member for Ottawa West Nepean.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Last week, I hosted the meeting of the Global Network of Women Legislators in Defence, Security and Peace Portfolios, or WLID, here in our Parliament. where we heard from Ukrainian MPs about being legislators in a time of war, including having an app that tells them when to leave the chamber and go to the bomb shelters. Their courage was inspiring and also reinforces our own determination to support Ukraine. Several years ago, I realized that there were very few women in defense or security portfolios globally, and I established WLID, which began as an informal WhatsApp group to what is now a global network with a secretariat, members on every continent, a website, and new co-chairs from Ukraine and Zambia. The network provides a supportive space to share strategies on how to overcome gendered stereotypes and barriers in this sector, and share strategies and ideas for legislators. I look forward to seeing the WLID network grow, including from members in this House and the other place. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Elmwood Transcona.
Madam Speaker, on November 30th, 2024, I had the chance to be a part of a historical event for Canada. This event, 154 years in the making, was the Red River Métis Self-Government Recognition and Implementation Treaty with the Government of Canada. I would like to congratulate Manitoba Métis Federation President David Chartrand, his staff, and community for their ongoing dedication to the Métis people and for ensuring this historical event happened. During his speech, President Chartrand acknowledged that Canada was a place where we can face challenges and come to terms with the mistakes of the past and move forward in a positive way, forging a new history for future generations. Words I hope all Canadians can appreciate as we stand together on the correct side of history. On behalf of my NDP colleagues, I was honoured to bear witness to this historic signing, and I hope that we can count on my fellow parliamentarians to commit to ensuring the treaty receives royal assent swiftly in the House. Thank you.
The honourable member for Yukon.
Madam Speaker, this week we celebrated Yukon Days on the Hill, an incredible event that brings a vibrant spirit of the North right here to Ottawa. We gathered parliamentarians, First Nations chiefs and the Grand Chief, the AFN Regional Chief, leaders from the Yukon government and other distinguished guests from the territory. Yukon Days is a unique opportunity to dive into meaningful conversations about the priorities and issues facing our territory. The week is indeed a testament to our spirit of collaboration and innovation. The Yukon is a place that leads with vision and determination, essential qualities for tackling the complex challenges we face and for building a stronger, more inclusive Canada. Madam Speaker, this very morning we announced Canada's new Arctic foreign policy. What better way to round out an extraordinary week for our territory? As a Member of Parliament for the Yukon, I'm thrilled to showcase the resilience, culture and leadership of our Yukon communities. Together we're ensuring that the Yukon's voice resonates around this great country. Thank you, merci. Ganal Shish, Shonathan, Soglasina, Masi Cho, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Wellington, Halton Hills.
Madam Speaker, Reverend Peter Barrow passed away at age 92. Beloved husband of Carol, devoted father of Trish, Jane, and Maggie, and cherished brother to Margaret, Reverend Barrow served as minister of Knox Presbyterian Church in Georgetown and Limehouse Presbyterian Church in Limehouse for 32 years. A lifetime member of the Masonic Lodge, Reverend Barrow was Georgetown Citizen of the Year in 1974. He was a founding member of the Georgetown Highland Games. He was involved in the Royal Canadian Air Cadets and the Rotary Club and served as Padre of the Georgetown and Acton branches of the Royal Canadian Legion. He was ever present at the remembrance ceremonies in Halton Hills, at the cenotaphs in Glen Williams, Georgetown, and Acton, helping all of us remember. We extend our heartfelt sympathies to his family. May he rest in peace.
The honourable member for Ottawa Centre.
Thank you, Speaker. As a Member of Parliament for Ottawa Centre, the revitalization of downtown Ottawa is a big priority for me. The pandemic, the occupation of downtown Ottawa has taken a significant role on the core of our city, and that's why I worked with businesses and community to establish a downtown Ottawa revitalization task force that has produced a lot of recommendations for all three orders of government to revitalize the core of our city. And I'm really proud that the recommendations that were outlined in that report are being implemented. For recently, for example, Speaker, we invested over $300 million to build 210 affordable housing through Dream LeBreton right in the downtown core. Just yesterday, we announced nearly $9 million to rejuvenate Bronson Center, which is a arts and community hub in our downtown core. Also, through the support of FedDev Ontario, we'll be opening a new tourism office around Elgin Street. And through advocacy, Ontario government is also putting forward $20 million to rejuvenate our downtown core. I will continue to keep working with City of Ottawa and other levels of government to make sure
The honourable member for Mississauga, Erin Mills.
Madam Speaker, today marks the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women, a day to honor the memory of 14 women tragically murdered in the 1989 Polytechnique Montreal massacre, and so many more since. In Canada, a woman or girl is killed every 48 hours. In Peel Region alone, police responded to over 16,000 incidents of family and intimate partner violence in 2023. That's 44 disputes every day, almost 2 every hour. And that's just what gets reported, not counting the silent. This violence against women goes beyond physical harm. With the rise of online platforms, harassment now includes trolling, hacking, and doxing. This systemic violence heavily affects marginalized women, Indigenous, racialized, and those with disabilities. We must break this cycle, and we must listen to and amplify survivors' voices and strengthen support systems for those affected by violence. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for North Okanagan-Shuswap.
The community of Falkland and the entire rodeo community has lost a champion. One of Canada's longest-running rodeos, the Falkland Stampede, will be missing the voice of Merv Churchill next year. At the age of 14, Merv was already deep in his passion for rodeos when he organized a barn dance to raise money for new corrals for the rodeo grounds. Merv was a champion bull rider at the 1961 Falkland Stampede, but gave up that short career to become the long-term manager of the Stampede. His wife Dot was always nearby, as was his family, and he also loved his community. The Canadian Pro Rodeo Association honored Merv as Committee Person of the Year in 1982, and he was inducted into the Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame in 2013. In fitting fashion, a celebration of life will be held outdoors at the Falkland Stampede grounds December 14th. And as Merv would say, dress warm. It could be colder than a well digger's out there.
L'honorable député.
Honourable member for Montmagny-Lisée, Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup. The Bloc Québécois has betrayed the interests of Quebecers by blindly supporting $500 billion in inflationary spending by this Liberal government. This crippling inflation is crushing Quebecers. Grocery, housing, and heating costs have skyrocketed. Our families and businesses are in crisis, and all the while the Bloc, instead of defending the interests of Quebecers, supports all the irresponsible spending of this Liberal government. It's time for this Bloc Liberal government to stop picking on Canadians. Quebecers deserve better than a government that has no sense of responsibility for taxpayers' money. Canada needs a strong Prime Minister leading a common-sense government that will bring back fiscal discipline and purchasing power to Canadians. There's only one thing to do: go to the polls. The Conservatives are here. They're working for Canadians, not against them. Canadians are ready for a Conservative government. We are going to restore Canada's promise. Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Fredericton.
Madam Speaker, today marks the 35th anniversary of the École Polytechnique massacre. I'd like to take a moment to reflect on the 14 young women who were tragically murdered by a man who hated them simply for being women. Women who had the audacity to pursue their educations. They were aunties, mothers, sisters, daughters, and friends. 35 years ago, misogyny stole the lives of these intelligent, talented, beautiful women, and violence against women has continued in Canada every day since. We see it in the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, where the rate of homicide against Indigenous women is 6 times higher than the rate among non-Indigenous women. We see it in the steadily rising rates of intimate partner violence, where 4 out of 5 victims are women. We see it on our social media, where men fill the comment sections with taunts of "your body, my choice." Madam Speaker, many MPs have spoken in this chamber on this topic, yet the epidemic of violence against women rages on. Anti-feminist movements are on the rise globally, and we must state unequivocally that this hatred has no place in Canada. Now more than ever, we must take urgent action against misogyny and stand together in support of women and girls. Je me souviens.
The honourable member for Northumberland, Peterborough South.
Madam Speaker, imagine you're a CFO of a billion-dollar enterprise, and when the fiscal year ends, you refuse to disclose the assets, the liabilities, the revenue, and then you ask to borrow billions of dollars more for next year. That is exactly what these Liberals are asking of Canadians, asking for billions of dollars without disclosing the numbers. This government's own budgetary watchdog said the Liberals will likely not meet their fiscal commitments. That means more deficits. That means more inflation for Canadians. When will this government live up to its obligations of transparency and fiscal accountability, stop covering up their financial mess, and just release the numbers?
The honourable member for Argenteuil, La Petite Nation. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today we commemorate the École Polytechnique tragedy, which happened on December 6, 1989. 35 years ago, 14 women were brutally murdered simply because they were women. This feminicide had a profound impact on our society and reminds us of the importance of fighting against violence against women and hate speech. We honor the memory of the victims and support their families and survivors. This somber anniversary prompts us to reflect on the progress made and the work that remains to be done to build an egalitarian and safe society for all women. As parliamentarians, we have a duty to strengthen laws to prevent such tragedies, to support education and awareness-raising initiatives, and to firmly denounce any act of violence. May this tragedy, despite its pain, inspire us to act for a better future. Thank you, and we will never forget you.
The honourable member for the Nanaimo, Lady Smith.
Madam Speaker, more than 3 decades has passed since the tragic murder of 14 women at Montreal's École Polytechnique on December 6, 1989. This abhorrent act of violent misogyny prompted Parliament to declare this day as the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women. Today, Madam Speaker, we honour the lives of Geneviève Bergeron, Hélène Colgan, Nathalie Croteau, Barbara Daignon, Anne-Marie Edward, Maude Havionnick, Maurice Laganière, Maurice Leclerc, Anne-Marie Lemay, Sonia Pelletier, Michel Richard, Anne-Marie Saint-Arnaud, Annie Turcot, and Barbara Kushnik-Vidiavich. As we grieve this tragic loss, we renew our dedication to combat the hate that fueled this dreadful event. Women, girls, and 2S LGBTQIA+ individuals across Canada and globally still face unacceptable violence and discrimination. We must unite to end gender-based violence today and every day.
The honourable member for Manicouagan. The North Shore is a land of excess, beauty, and riches, but its nature can also be merciless. That is why it also produces being souls made to measure. In fact, before winter whitened our forests, Monsieur Jean-Guy Carrier was paddling one of our thousands of lakes with his son-in-law when their boat capsized. The two men tried to get to shore, but Mr. Carrier couldn't swim. Yet it was his son-in-law's body that fatigue was dragging to the bottom of the lake, and it was Mr. Carrier who, with the incredible strength that only love can instill, pulled his son-in-law to shore. He was unconscious and not breathing. Mr. Carrier set about resuscitating him and gave him back his breath, his life. Mr. Carrier, I'm among those who believe that your gesture is one that should inspire us. Our world needs kindness, and your heart, Mr. Carrier, is cut right out of the size of our North Shore. Thank you.
The honourable for Calgary Shepherd.
The NDP leader says he's fighting for Canadians, but his actions speak louder than his empty promises. After 24 votes in obedience to this Prime Minister to hike an inflationary carbon tax, hike grocery bills, and record-breaking food bank lineups, all to protect a 2.2 million pension, the luxury Maserati Marxist doesn't come cheap. Consumer Affairs says Maserati upkeep is a, quote, significant expense. It goes on to say, it says you can expect per year cost to rise every year for the first 4 years. Does that sound familiar? Maserati expenses are 3 times the cost of a worker's car. Exotic sweet rides, luxury fake Rolex, U.S. private schools, and luxury $200 rocking chairs that could pay a month's rent. The NDP leader helped double housing costs, drive up crime 50%, and families will pay $800 more next year for food. His vote comes cheap, his leadership comes cheap, but his pension sure doesn't come cheap. Canadians need tax relief now instead of more NDP leadership. On Monday, he has the chance to stand up for Canadians. How will he vote?
Hear, hear.
The honourable member for Sherbrooke.
Candles, roses, 14 beams. Masculinity, virility, harassment, and violence and hate. Today marks 35 years. 35 years ago, 14 women, full of promise and ambition, lost their lives at the hands of a man in a tragic anti-feminist act. We must not obscure the true dimension of this act. These leaders of tomorrow were robbed of their future, but their memory compels us to act. That is why we have taken robust measures regarding so-called assault-style firearms, including yesterday's expansion of the list of models that are banned in this country. Women are strong and courageous. Their safety and freedom must be defended. Being a feminist means having the social will to improve the situation for all women. It is a project of equality for all individuals. Tonight in Montreal, 14 beams will light up the sky, and we will remember, and we will not give up the fight. Today, these 14 women are no more, but the pain still exists. So does the urgency of fighting violence against women.
Oral questions, questions orales. The honourable member for Thornhill.
Madam Speaker, there's snow on the ground and it's pretty cold in the capital, and Canadians from coast to coast are putting up Christmas trees. But the finance minister is stuck in fantasy land, somehow still thinks it's fall. She's weeks behind on delivering the fall economic statement to this House and to Canadians. The parliamentary budget officer says that this minister blew past her deficit reduction targets, adding more inflationary spending and crippling debt that Canadians will have to pay. But we don't know for sure because she's nowhere to be found. So when will the finance minister tell Canadians just how much money she spent?
The honourable minister.
Madam Speaker, we look forward to answering our colleagues' questions, but I do feel it's important to recognize the gravity of this day. It is the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women, and 35 years ago, 14 women's lives were cut short in a brutal act of violence at l'École Polytechnique, killed simply because they were women. Gender-based violence must not be tolerated in this country, and we all have a role to play in ending it.
The honourable member for Thornhill.
Madam Speaker, Conservatives on this side of the House stand in solidarity with all of the victims' families on this tragic day. My question, however, was about the finance minister and the fact that she is hiding today. She's hiding. She hasn't hidden the fact that she's doubled Canada's debt. She gave us the highest inflation in 40 years, and she delivered the lowest projected growth of any advanced economy. Right. She's trying to hide the truth for Canadians. So I will ask once again, if she doesn't want to come clean, can anybody on that side of the House tell us exactly how much Canada's deficit is this year?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Well, Madam Speaker, we'll put our record up against the Conservatives any day of the week and twice on Sundays. Let me quote from a former governor of the Bank of Canada, David Dodge. He said, because it was obsessively focused on reducing the federal deficit over fiscal years 2011 and 12 through 2015, the Harper government unnecessarily contributed to a slower, rather more muted recovery. So while Conservatives slowed down our recovery, we have accelerated our post-pandemic recovery and are now on track to have the highest growth rate in the G7. That's in addition to Canadian work.
Honourable member for Thornhill.
Madam Speaker, if that minister wants to put his money where his mouth is, he should call a carbon tax election and let Canadians decide. The finance minister, however, is going to have to find another job after the next election, and maybe she'll find out that you can't turn in your work that's been overdue. It's something that we learn in grade school, and she must have skipped that day. Her government lost control of our borders. They've lost control of immigration. They've clearly lost control of the deficit, too, and they're trying to cover up their tracks. So I will ask again, for those in the back, and I will say it slower, what is Canada's deficit this year?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Let's just review, Madam Speaker, the Conservative track record on affordability. So they will not support feeding hungry kids healthy meals at school. 400,000 more kids, they say, no, we don't want to feed you. They will not support a GST break over the holidays on food, toys, and other essentials over the holidays. They say, no, we won't support a GST cut for Canadians. They also won't lift a finger to fight climate change, which is cited in the report as being the greatest driver of food price inflation. When will they get on side with Canadians and actually support?
L'honorable député de Lévis-Lotbinière.
The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Madam Speaker, the Liberals have not even tabled an economic statement this fall. The Parliamentary Budget Officer was very clear. Our 2023-24 financial audits have not even been tabled. It's a historic lack of transparency in the history of our country. Canadians deserve to know how high the deficit is for this fiscal year ending on March 31st, 2024.
Merci, Madame Présidente. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for the question. As he very well knows, our government has been investing to increase the number of jobs throughout the country. And today, there's some good news. There are 51,000 new jobs for Canadians.
It's going to help grow the economy, that's going to help transition into a modern economy, that's going to build the homes Canadians need, and importantly, provide the support to the families who are dealing with a higher cost of living. It's a shame that the Conservatives, every step of the way, oppose these measures.
L'honorable député de Lévis-Lotbinière.
The Honourable Member. Madam Speaker, twice this government voted to keep this bad government in place. And yet, this government doesn't even seem to be able to cap its inflationary deficit at $40 billion, which is leading to an increase of $800 in grocery costs for the average family in 2025, which means that now children are having to ask Santa for basic necessities of life. Canadians want to know, how high will this inflationary deficit be? The Honourable Minister. Honestly, it's very difficult to accept this question when this very week the member had an opportunity to vote to reduce taxes on food, but he voted against that. He will have in the near future another opportunity to vote on programs for school lunch programs throughout the country. I wonder if he's going to vote against that once again. Madam Speaker, in this House, we need to support families and communities. But at every possible opportunity, the Conservative Party votes against that. The Honourable Member for Manicouagan. Madam Speaker, the National Assembly of Quebec has unanimously asked the federal government to repeal the religious exception in the Criminal Code, which enables hate speech to be proffered on the basis of faith. Religion is no excuse for hate. We might think that everyone agrees about that, but on Wednesday, the Liberals blocked a motion to defend that simple principle. And yet, the Minister of Justice says that he wants to fight hate speech. So what does he have to say to his colleagues who want the federal government to protect religious extremists who are inciting violence? The Honourable Minister of Justice. Inaudible for the interpreter. Madam Speaker, what I can say is that on this side of the House, we are for any effort to fight hate, especially the increase in anti-Semitism that we're seeing in Quebec and elsewhere in Canada. We want to work together to improve a piece of legislation that's already in this House. Bill C-63, the Online Harms Act, we're very happy to work with the Bloc to improve and pass that bill. The Honourable Member. Well, the National Assembly of Quebec wants to get rid of this religious exception, but in Ottawa, there are some MPs who want to protect hate speech and the religious exception. In Quebec, we're defending social peace and solidarity, but in Ottawa, some want to sow division and violence. In Quebec, we defend secularism, but in Ottawa, some people are defending the right to commit crimes in the name of religion. This is ridiculous. Religion is no excuse for crimes. What is so hard to understand about that? The Honourable Minister. Madam Speaker, on this side of the House, we have a national strategy to fight hate, as well as Bill C-63, which addresses online radicalization, where many of these problems begin. And then after that online radicalization, we often see real-life hate and crimes. We also know that this bill, our online harms bill, will address the same section of the criminal code as the one referenced by the Bloc Québécois bill, and we're happy to work with them on this.
Burnaby Sud.
Liberals and Conservatives have a choice. Will they support Canadians in real cost of living relief, or will they just keep letting Canadians get ripped off? The NDP is forcing a vote in this House to permanently scrap the GST off of all family essentials and have the rebate be extended to seniors and students and people with disabilities. It's time for Canadians to come first, not the profits of ultra-rich corporations. So will the government support our plan, the NDP plan, to help Canadians put food on the table and keep a roof over their head?
I just want to say I introduced the honourable member as a different riding, so it's New Westminster Burnaby. I'll correct that in the record. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And it's great to see the NDP getting behind a tax break for Canadians over the holidays on essential goods at the grocery store, kids' toys, Christmas trees, everything that will make this holiday season a little bit more merry and bright for Canadians. It's too bad the Conservatives won't stand up to do the same. Especially given the fact that they campaigned on this in the last election. It's truly the height of hypocrisy, Madam Speaker. I'm not sure when Conservatives will get on board with actually supporting Canadians.
The honourable for Nanaimo, Ladysmith.
Madam Speaker, everyone should be able to afford a good home and to save for a rainy day. But people in Nanaimo, Ladysmith are struggling. They need permanent, not temporary relief. The Conservatives are a threat to this relief for those who need it most. They only want to get tax breaks for billionaires while everyday Canadians pay the price. And the Liberals have clearly let Canadians down. Will the Liberals give people in Nanaimo, Ladysmith the break they need to permanently remove GST off essentials? Yes or no?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Well, it's clear that the Liberal Party of Canada and our government believes in giving Canadians a break over the holidays. That relief will certainly save families money over the holidays. Much needed relief after the struggles that many workers and Canadians have gone through over the inflationary pressures that they've felt over many months. It's too bad that the Conservative Party of Canada just will not step up and support Canadians. They've obsessively harped in this House about giving Canadians tax breaks, and then when the opportunity arises, they will not step up to actually support Canadians.
The honourable member Niagara Falls.
Speaker, after 9 years of this failed NDP Liberal government, more and more Canadians are going hungry. They see the Liberal 2-month tax trick for what it is, nothing more than a lump of coal in their Christmas stockings. Exactly. 1 million people are visiting a food bank each month in Ontario, and in Niagara Falls, 120 families per day on average are visiting Project Share, our local food bank, because they cannot afford groceries. When will this NDP Liberal government axe the carbon tax to provide the permanent broad-based tax relief Canadians need and deserve?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Minister.
Well, I've got some good news to share with that member, because just a few weeks ago, we signed an agreement with the province of Ontario for our national school food program. This means an additional 160,000 kids this school year will have access to healthy food at school. This is help for parents in a stressful and affordable or expensive time. And it ensures that kids can focus on being kids and can focus on learning
When will the Conservatives get on side and support these measures for families?
Hear, hear. Member from Niagara Falls.
Speaker, a 2-month Liberal tax trick does not provide the broad-based permanent tax relief Canadians need. And sadly, they plan to raise the carbon tax again next year. 1 in 7 residents in my community of Niagara Falls have visited Project Share. Almost 5,000 residents visited for the first time last year alone. Wow. Canadians need our help. They need permanent broad-based tax relief. When will this government finally call a carbon tax election so we can scrap the tax?
The Honourable Minister.
I'd like to remind that member that the last time that they were in government, that the poverty rate for children was 16%, Madam Speaker. We have lifted hundreds of thousands of kids out of poverty, and the single most effective measure in doing that is the Canada Child Benefit, ensuring parents have support each and every month to be able to afford the essentials for their family. And guess who voted against it? Guess who vows to dissolve it, Madam Speaker? The Conservatives.
Member for Calgary Centre.
Well, Madam Speaker, the first thing a government has to get right is the basics. For Canadians, that's food and shelter. After 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, these costs are way up. Housing costs have doubled. Even more basic food costs continue to escalate, and food bank usage is up 90%. Let them eat cake is not an effective strategy. Escalating deficits are the root cause of inflation, and this government still does not get that. Reality is landing on the plates of Canadians. When will this government take a lesson and stop its economic mayhem?
The Minister.
My colleague points to food and shelter as pressure points for Canadian households. I actually agree, but let's actually look at what the different parties are proposing to do about it. First, on food, he's complaining about the high price when he literally is voting against a tax break on food. He's literally opposing a national school food program which is helping hungry kids eat. Madam Speaker, when it comes to shelter, his own city is benefiting from hundreds of millions of dollars in investments directly to build homes more quickly, and he is supporting a leader who vows to cut that program. I won't take lessons from the Conservative Party, who cuts the very programs that put food on the table for families.
Member for Calgary Centre.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This member keeps trying to talk about putting Band-Aids on the wounds his economic policies are causing. But step one is to reverse inflationary policies. Cancel the carbon tax that it hikes the price of food, fuel, and rent. Food inflation has skyrocketed by over 36% over the past 8 years. Higher deficits lead to higher inflation and a weaker Canadian dollar, leading to more inflation. This spending isn't free. Just ask the 2 million Canadians lining up at food banks. Time is up. When will this Prime Minister call a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Minister.
It is hard to understand how a member whose city is receiving $228 million for housing considers that to be a Band-Aid solution. Does he think it is a Band-Aid solution that we are helping his city lead the country when it comes to converting office spaces to homes for Canadians? Does he think it is a Band-Aid solution that we are advancing a permanent program that's going to feed hungry kids in school? I have great respect for that honourable member. I love the city that he calls home, as it once provided a home to me. But it is difficult, once again, to accept questions on the cost of food and shelter from a member in a party who opposes the policies that make it easier to put food on the table for families and keep a roof over their head.
The Honourable Member from Montmagny-Lisle-Kamouraska-Rivière-du-Loup. Madam Speaker, after 9 years of this Liberal government, the cost of living is unbearable. Canadians are living through an unprecedented crisis. And yet, what is the Bloc Québécois doing? It's betrayed Quebecers. It has voted for $500 million in spending. And this year, more than 33,000 Quebec children are asking for heartbreaking gifts at Christmas, like a winter coat, a lunchbox, or even a home for their family. In a country like Canada, this is shameful. Can the Liberal Bloc give Quebecers a break and stop supporting this Liberal Prime Minister who is constantly making people poorer? The Honourable Minister.
Member for the question. When I am out and about in my community talking to parents, I recently had a conversation with Olivier, who just had their fourth child, and he shared with me the impact of the Canada Child Benefit for his family. He shared with me the impact of affordable childcare, enabling both of them to go back to work. These are meaningful measures that we have taken to address affordability for Canadians, in which we continue to see the Conservatives oppose.
The honourable member for Montmagny-Lise, Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup. Madam Speaker, this Prime Minister's inflationary spending, supported by the Bloc Québécois, is crushing Canadians. Today, when Quebec children write to Santa, they are asking for heartbreaking items. Hundreds are asking for mittens and winter coats. It's horrifying. This should not be happening in a country like Canada. When will this Liberal bloc stop harming Quebec families like this and stealing our children's dreams? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Madam Speaker. We are hearing that we need to help families with affordability. That's why we've stepped in to help our children with school lunches and school meals. We've brought in a GST break. The Conservatives could vote with us on that. They could be telling their constituents who are suffering over the holidays that they will be supporting them. But on the contrary, they did the exact opposite. They voted against all these measures for our kids. The Honourable Member for Rivière-des-Mille. Madam Speaker, the federal government doesn't even seem to know if our veterans are dead or alive. Imagine 2 veterans discovered that the 2 sculptures have been made of them in a monument to honor veterans who have died in combat in Ontario. And out of 67 people in the monument, 12 of them are alive, and 4 of them never even served. A complaint was made, and their names have been removed from the plaque, but their image is still on the sculpture, standing among the dead. Will the minister finally get rid of this sculpture and apologize?
Employment, workforce development, and official languages.
Madam Speaker, I thank the honourable member for raising this issue in this House. I can confirm the department has not provided funding to this specific project, and the VAC was not asked to validate the list of names featured on the memorial. That said, Veterans Affairs is in touch with the organization to rectify the matter, and we will. The Executive Director of Trees for Life has said this issue is a major priority to get this rectified, and we expect that this will be done swiftly and without delay. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Rivière-des-Mille. Madam Speaker, they don't even seem to know what they spent money on or not. No one seems to have checked what the $2.9 million in 2019 was used for, even after the monument was unveiled in 2022, and there were Liberal MPs there. No one seemed to realize that they had paid for sculptures where living service members had been named among the list of the dead. These veterans had to complain in 2023, and yet, as late as Monday, the minister didn't seem to know anything about the situation. So 5 years later, these 2 sculptures show very clearly that this federal government is only a monument to incompetence. Will the minister get rid of these sculptures?
Madam Speaker, je peux confirmer que
Madam Speaker, I can confirm that the department did not grant money to this specific project and that Veterans Affairs Canada was not asked to verify the names on the memorial. That said, the department has reached out to the organization to rectify the situation, and I expect that to be dealt with without any further delay.
The honourable member for Miramichi Grand Lake.
Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister and his new BFF, the Maserati Marxist, have never been more out of touch. Their punishing carbon tax makes your gas, groceries, and heating more expensive. The Carbon Tax Coalition has doubled housing costs, doubled rent, doubled mortgage payments, and doubled down payments for a home. Workers cannot afford to pay their rent or mortgages, and Canadians are out of money. When will the Prime Minister call a carbon tax election so we can axe the tax for good?
Again, I want to remind members to be judicial on the words that they use and not to use them to describe other members. The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, I just want to clarify the record for everyone who's watching question period on a Friday morning that the coalition on carbon pricing actually fissured this year when the NDP abandoned their policy on carbon pricing. It is known as the most effective economic measure to bring down the price of pollution and also to boost economic activity. Witness the Canada Carbon Rebate to individuals, and now witness the Canada Carbon Rebate being applied to small businesses. As much as tens of thousands of dollars depending on the size of your business. It is an economic model that is proven in terms of the evidence and is a model that helps to bring down emissions. I would just hope that the NDP would get back on board.
The honourable member for Miramichi Grand Lake.
Madam Speaker, the government has killed small business, and it's all for the pension when it comes to the NDP. Next week, the NDP leader will be forced to vote on his own words. It's the ultimate test of who he is. Does he mean what he says, or are his words meaningless? He said he was ripping up the supply and confidence deal. We know it was a stunt before a by-election. The NDP leader gets his pension. The Prime Minister gets his power. Canadians get the bill. Stop the charade and the games. Call a carbon tax election now.
So just a reminder that the questions have to do with the administration of the House. And so I just want to remind members of that. Okay. That's not a question on the administration of the House. The honourable member for Kelowna Lake Country.
After 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, Canadian families are paying the price for the Prime Minister's inflationary carbon tax. Canada's food price report just revealed a family of 4 will spend $800 more on food in 2025. Food prices rose 36% faster in Canada than the United States. Taxing farmers, truckers, and ultimately families have driven millions of Canadians to food banks. And yet, the Liberals are hiking the carbon tax again. Will the Prime Minister finally give families some relief and cancel his punitive carbon tax?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, 15 cents on a $100 bill. That's how small the impact of carbon pricing truly is. But when we offered Canadians a GST tax cut over the holidays, which is 100 times greater than that, the Conservatives oppose it. Conservatives demonstrate in this House every single day how they are not supporting Canadians. But this is truly a new height to their hypocrisy.
NDP Liberal government, food bank usage is actually up 90%. Rising food costs driven by the carbon tax mean the average family will spend $16,800 on food next year. People who used to donate to food banks are now clients. Canadians are struggling, and yet the Prime Minister will quadruple the carbon tax to 61 cents a litre. Will the Prime Minister admit his failed policies and that are making food unaffordable and cancel the carbon tax so families can put food on their table?
Honourable Minister.
I challenge that member to point to a single thing that her party has done to help Canadians address affordability issues. Frankly, it's appalling, Mr. Speaker. On this side of the House, we will continue to put forward measures like a GST holiday, like the Canada Child Benefit, to ensure that families have the support that they need through these expensive times while they continue to deny Canadians the support that they need.
The honourable member for Skeena-Bulkley Valley.
Madam Speaker, it's disappointing that at a time when so many families are struggling to afford the basic essentials, we see the Conservatives voting against a GST tax cut. At Christmas, no less. And the Liberals, classic half measure not only doesn't put enough money back in people's pockets, it requires small businesses to change their prices twice in 2 months at the busiest time of year. Why won't the Liberals vote for our plan? Expand the GST tax cut, make it permanent, put more money back in people's pockets, and give small businesses a break. Why not?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Well, a GST tax break for Canadians over the holidays on essentials is going to make life more affordable for them for the next 2 months. That is good news for Canadians. It's great to see the NDP behind that proposal from the government. It's a shame that the Conservatives, who harp about cutting taxes for months and months and months and months in this House, for as long as I can remember, would actually stand up in this House and oppose a tax break for Canadians over the holidays. They're not serious, Madam Speaker. That's clear. All Canadians should wake up and realize that the Conservatives just won't be there to support them.
Port Modi Coquitlam.
More than half of women living on the streets are survivors of domestic violence. And women with disabilities are even more vulnerable because when they marry, the government claws back their disability benefits, making them choose between abuse or homelessness. The Liberals have let women with disabilities down, and we know what happened to support for women when Conservatives were in power. Cuts, cuts, and cuts. Will the Liberals stop their cruel and callous clawbacks that put women with disabilities in danger?
Yes, good question.
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, for the first time in Canada, there is a benefit designed to specifically help persons with disabilities, and of course it's going to help women with disabilities as well. This is a historic step, Madam Speaker, that we have put forward to address a long-standing poverty amongst working-age persons with disabilities. Like other progressive programs, we're going to make sure we're continue to expand it to make sure all Canadians with disabilities, working-age Canadians with disabilities are supported, particularly some of the most vulnerable women. Thank you.
So before I go to the next question, I'm going to allow the Honourable Member for Miramichi-Grand Lake to re-ask his question because I hadn't heard the end of the question, but I do want to remind members that they should link their question to the administration of the House a little earlier in their question so that we know where this is heading. The Honourable Member for Miramichi-Grand Lake.
It's all about the pension, Madam Speaker. Next week, the NDP leader will be forced to vote on his own words. The ultimate test of who he is as a leader. Does he mean it or not? When he said he ripped up the supply agreement, it was just a stunt before a by-election. The NDP leader gets his pension, the Prime Minister gets his power, Canadians get the bill. It's time to call a carbon tax election, stop the charade, end the games, call the election now.
Okay, so there was, I thought I hadn't heard quite the thing. There was actually no question in that comment. I'm not sure if anybody wants to respond to it at this point. So there's no response to it. The Honourable Member for St. John's East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today we remember the 14 young women who were killed during the École Polytechnique massacre. As the 16 days of activism to end gender-based violence comes to an end, we are reminded that our work must continue until we achieve a Canada free of gender-based violence. Could the Minister for Women and Gender Equality and Youth update Canadians on the work our government is doing to prevent gender-based violence?
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, it's 35 years since the École Polytechnique massacre, where 14 women were gunned down simply because they were women. And this tragedy reminds us why we must stand against gender-based violence so we can prevent femicides. The greatest risk for intimate partner violence becoming lethal is a gun in the home. That's why we've banned more than 1,500 assault-style weapons, including the gun that was used at École Polytechnique. Yesterday, we banned an additional 324. On this side of the House, we will always prioritize the safety of women.
The Honourable Member for Stormont Dundas, South Glengarry.
The NDP will once again sell out Canadians on Monday by refusing to stand by their own words, because here's the deal. The NDP leader gets his pension, the Prime Minister gets the power, and Canadians get the bill. And those bills are ever increasing when you look at the carbon tax that is going to be going up again on April the 1st on their way to quadrupling it. And it was the Canada Food Price Report for 2025 that revealed just yesterday that an average family of 4 in Canada will pay $800 a year more in groceries next year. 2 million visits to a food bank. Why can't the Liberals and NDP just allow a carbon tax election to either quadruple it or allow Conservatives to axe it entirely?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, a lot of questions about what the NDP is doing in terms of supporting parliamentary process. Let me talk about one thing that is very salient for today. Today is December the 6th, the anniversary of 35 women being shot down in cold blood at the École Polytechnique. What the NDP is doing is supporting a bill on the floor of this chamber that will help tackle the root causes of violence against women. What am I talking about? I'm talking about radical misogyny that starts online. The Bill C-63 and the Online Harms Act help us target misogyny at its core. That is something that every member of Parliament needs to get behind, and we need to do it now because time is wasting about keeping women safe.
The honourable member for, Stormont Dundas, South Glengarry.
We stand in solidarity with the victims and their families as always, each and every year. The NDP, though, has to answer for what is going on the NDP motion because he won't back up their own words by what they've said in just recent months. It was the NDP leader that said the Liberals are too weak, too selfish, and too beholden to corporate interests to fight for people. He said he ripped up the coalition agreement that's kept the Liberals in power, yet as soon as the stunt got over, he taped it back together and gave it back to the Prime Minister. So the question, Madam Speaker, for the Liberals is, will they work with the NDP finally and not quadruple the carbon tax, but allow Canadians to have their say in a carbon tax election, or are they too scared to what Canadians have to say to them?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And the people of Canada have had their say on carbon taxes in the last election. In fact, the Conservative Party, when they were in power, passed a bill called the Fixed Date Election Bill. So they keep calling. They want us to break the law. We won't break the law. You can break the law. We're not that kind of people.
Just want to remind the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary he's to address questions and comments through the chair and not directly to the members. The Honourable Member for Kenora.
Madam Speaker, the government cannot be administered without the confidence of this House, and the NDP leader once said the Liberals are too weak, too selfish, and too beholden to corporate interests to fight for Canadians. And now, Madam Speaker, the NDP leader says that he's going to vote against his own words and in favour of propping up this Liberal government. A government that has doubled housing costs, that has caused 2 million Canadians to visit a food bank in a single month, and plans to quadruple the carbon tax, Madam Speaker. So instead, why don't they call a carbon tax election so that Canadians can choose between the costly coalition or our common sense plan to axe the tax?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, I will just point out for Canadians watching today that we've actually had 3 elections in a row on pricing pollution, on ensuring that no one in this country gets away with polluting for free. That was the 2015 election, the 2019 election, and the 2021 election when that party had to campaign on pricing pollution themselves. What I would say is that it's proving dividends in terms of the Canadian economy. How is it doing so? Because we are returning more money to 8 out of 10 families through the Canada Carbon Rebate and through the Canada Carbon Rebate delivered to small businesses.
The Honourable Member for Kenora.
Madam Speaker, that is simply not true, and the Parliamentary Budget Officer has confirmed it. And we know that this NDP Liberal coalition is planning to hike taxes again next year. Despite the theatrical display of ripping up their confidence and supply agreement, Madam Speaker, this coalition is still alive and well. And even when Liberal MPs are calling for a new Prime Minister, this NDP leader is the only person that is keeping the Prime Minister in power. Once again, Mr. Speaker, instead, why don't they give Canadians a chance to vote in a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Well, Conservatives want to talk about confidence, Madam Speaker. You know what the Canadians can have confidence in? They can have confidence in our government to deliver programs and services that make their life more affordable, that contribute to their quality of life, like our early learning and childcare program. Jim Stanford, a very famous economist in this country, just did a report on the success of that program, that it's created 110,000 additional work opportunities for women and contributed $32 billion in GDP to the Canadian economy, and that's while saving Canadians 28% on average on their childcare costs. We are proving that you can invest.
For Caribou Prince George.
The Honourable Member for LaSalle Aymar Verdun. Madam Speaker, cycling in Montreal happens in winter and summer, at least when the federal government doesn't get in the way. Imagine the city offers to clear the snow from the bike path on the south side of the Lachine Canal at its own expense, but Ottawa refuses. Parks Canada doesn't have to make any effort, and yet it's too much to ask. On November 11th, the Southwest Borough passed a unanimous resolution asking Parks Canada to authorize snow removal. I also question the Minister of the Environment. Is he going to ask Parks Canada to get out of the way?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. First, that is a point for the municipal government. It's a municipal issue. Once again, Madam Speaker, well, if there's opportunity after question period, I'd be very happy to speak with that colleague on this issue. But for me, this is clearly a municipal issue. The honourable member for LaSalle-Irmar-Verdun. Madam Speaker, Parks Canada is federal, and the citizens of Southwest aren't asking for too much. They simply want snow-cleared access to downtown. The city would do the work, and the city would foot the bill. Parks Canada has yet to disclose a single well-documented fact or reason for its staggering refusal. The Minister of the Environment is himself a fan of active transportation. He too must think it makes no sense. With Montreal already snowed under, will the Minister of the Environment and the member for Ville-Sainte-Marie finally settle this issue? Madam Speaker, what I'd like to underscore that on this side of the House, we are promoting active transit, jogging, walking, and people who ride their bikes at Montreal, Toronto, across Canada. If he wants to discuss this more after question period, we would be comfortable talking about how we can help the city of Montreal with their job of removing snow from bike paths. Thank you.
Member Caribou Prince George.
The Liberals are too weak, too selfish, and too beholden to corporate interests to fight for the people. Who said that? The Twitter-tough Maserati Marxist sellout NDP leader. He puffed up his chest, stomped his feet, yet he chooses the Prime Minister over Canadians each and every time. He's the only one propping up this government. He's complicit in every Liberal scandal and every failed policy. On Monday, will he vote for a carbon tax election, or will he once again put his pension before Canadians?
So that question definitely has no relevance to the administration of the House, and I want to ask members to please not be yelling out when others are speaking. The honourable member for Caribou Prince George, and it has to be with the administration of the House, or else I will cut him off and we'll go to another question. The honourable member for Caribou Prince George.
Madam Speaker, they're weak, they're desperate, and the only reason why they're in power is because of the NDP leaders too selfish and too beholden to the Prime Minister to support his own motion made up of entirely his own words. They voted 24 times to quadruple the carbon tax. The costly coalition has doubled housing costs, doubled rent, doubled mortgage payments. But on Monday, they all have an opportunity. Will the NDP leader put the people above his pension?
Sorry, again, the honourable member is not being relevant to the administration of the House. We are going to move on, and next time, the next question for the members will be cut. He was asking the question. Does the honourable member, is it relevant to the administration of the House?
Asking for a carbon tax election. Madam Speaker, is that not relevant to the administration of the House?
The honourable member. The honourable member will finish this question, and if it's not relevant, then the next question will be passed on. The honourable member.
Madam Speaker, they're weak, they're desperate, and the only reason why they're in power today is because of the Maserati Marxist NDP leader, who's too selfish, too beholden to the Prime Minister to support a motion made up entirely of his own words.
Member to read his whole question. If he can just finish the question at the bottom, please.
Madam Speaker, on Monday, we have an opportunity. Will the NDP vote for a motion to call a carbon tax election?
Again, it's got nothing to do with the administration of the government. The honourable member, and if this continues, the honourable members will end up losing a question. The honourable member for Bow River.
Thank you. The leader of the NDP says he ripped up his coalition agreement with the Prime Minister, calling him weak, selfish, and beholden to corporate interests. Conservatives agree. The NDP leader can prove it by putting his pension where his mouth is and voting on confidence in this Prime Minister. After 9 years of the NDP Liberal coalition, housing, rent have doubled, and they will quadruple the carbon tax, driving up the cost of gas, groceries, and home heating. Will the government Give the Canadians relief they need by calling a carbon tax election now.
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, a lot of us are struggling to understand the nature of today's question period, but I think I've discerned what it is. The official opposition seems to be off their game because they're not using a lot of three-word slogans. And because of that, it's actually destabilized the House. What I can say simply about housing is that we support housing, and we support the housing accelerator that I think 17 members of the official opposition advocated for before they were told not to by their leader. Secondly, we support the fight for the environment, and we will continue to advocate for making sure pollution is not free, and we will participate and work with any party that wants to support us in that endeavor, because it supports the environment.
The Honourable Member for Humber River Black Creek.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Well, the holiday season is fast approaching, which means many Canadians will soon be celebrating with family and friends. But what we also know is what Canadians are getting in their Christmas stockings this year from the Leader of the Opposition. Broken campaign promises and hypocritical speeches, and more of that. Could our Minister please tell the House what we're going to do to support Canadians this winter?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank the honourable member for her question, her incredible work, and her leadership. Last week, this House voted to give Canadians a real break by eliminating GST on essential goods. This means that ready-to-eat meals, children's clothing, toys, books, and Christmas trees will not be taxed this holiday season. Now, Canadians across this country will benefit from real relief at the checkout. Now, unfortunately, the Leader of the Opposition decided to do what he normally does and put partisan interests ahead of helping Canadians and voted against removing a tax. Can the Leader of the Opposition explain to Canadians why he decided to act like a Grinch this Christmas?
So again, questions and comments have to do with the administration of the government, and it's not to ask. He asked the question to the Leader of the Opposition. The honourable member for Calgary-Midnapore.
Thank you very much. Madam Speaker, the facts don't lie. The Leader of the NDP, with this Prime Minister, voted for the carbon tax 24 times, and they will do it again next week. This Leader of the NDP, along with the Prime Minister, will quadruple the carbon tax in the spring. He's the one who created the coalition agreement with this government that has doubled mortgages, doubled housing prices, and has sent 2 million Canadians to food banks. So this coming Monday, the Leader of the NDP has a decision. Will he continue to prop up this Prime Minister for his pension, or will he call a carbon tax election?
So again, I would just, it's very clear that individuals are playing with words and that these questions are not to do with the administration of the government. You cannot ask a leader of another party or other members to respond to these questions. It should be to the on the administration of the government and to the government to respond. The honourable member for Calgary-Midnapore, I hope that her other question is related to the administration and is asked to the government. Otherwise, the honourable member will I will have to cut her off. The honourable member for Calgary-Midnapore.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Well, just over 3 months ago, the Leader of the NDP ripped up the agreement he had with the government. He had the agreement with the government, Madam Speaker. He said that the Prime Minister was too weak, too selfish, too beholden to corporate interests to fight for Canadians. So this coming week again, on Monday, Madam Speaker, the Leader of the NDP has an opportunity again to decide if he will prop up this government again or not. Is he going to prop up the Prime Minister or allow Canadians?
Again, the honourable member knows full well, I just warned her, and she knows full well that she's not to ask questions of another opposition during question period. She is supposed to ask the government questions. And so this has been going on for quite some time. I would just ask members to please make sure that their preamble has more to do with the work of the government, so that we know that it's going in the right direction, or at least that their end of their question has to do with the government and the administration of the government. The honourable member for... sorry.
The minister wants to respond.
Oh, I see that the minister still wants to respond. The honourable minister.
Well, I think what's really important is to focus on some of the issues. And one of the issues that Canadians are rightfully asking about this House is about the concern about foreign interference and things such as how do we target foreign interference. What I find fascinating is that we've had a lot of discussions about the leader of the NDP. That leader has actually had the courage to get a security clearance and get a briefing to help to protect this country. In fact, there's only one member of a party that has not done exactly that, and that is the leader of the official opposition. For a man who would purport to assume and want the highest job in this country, I find it actually quite appalling that he doesn't have the courage to work on getting a clearance, getting a briefing, and protecting this country.
The honourable for Regina Wascana.
The fact is the Liberals are too weak, too selfish, and too beholden to corporate interests to fight for people. Those are the words of the NDP leader, who continues to betray Canadians by propping up this failed Liberal government. The leader of the party that used to represent workers now props up a government that raises the carbon tax, makes homes unaffordable.
Sorry, I want to ask members to please settle down and please extend the respect to the House to the person who has the floor. I will find out soon enough what the question is, and we'll go from there. And if this continues, as I said, we will have to go into a practice of pulling questions from those who are who are trying to pose questions. The honourable member for Regina Wascana.
The leader of the party that used to represent workers now props up a government that raises the carbon tax, makes homes unaffordable, has lost control of the deficit, and lets crime run loose on our streets. On Monday's vote, will the Prime Minister continue to hide behind the NDP, or will he finally call a carbon tax election?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, it's a shame that the opposition still hasn't figured out to ask a question on the administration of government business. But while I'm on my feet, I might as well, Madam Speaker, speak about what happened yesterday at the Public Safety Committee, where there was pretty shocking testimony about foreign interference in the Conservative election race, confirming that the member from Calgary Nose Hill, in fact, received an angry phone call from the Indian consulate and brought that forward to Mr. Brown's leadership campaign, where they, in fact, changed his language to make the Indian consulate happy. Why aren't Conservatives talking?
The honourable member for St. John Rothsay.
Madam Speaker, good thing this question period's almost over. Let's try this. Last week, on the first day of Christmas, the leader of the opposition showed an amazing level of hypocrisy. When this House voted to give Canadians a break, the leader of the opposition decided to vote against it, despite running on it in the last election. Can the minister explain why providing tax relief for Canadians during the holidays will move our economy forward? And everybody have a great weekend, and let's relax.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Well, I want to thank the member from St. John Rothsay for the question. The hypocrisy of the Conservative leader is absolutely shocking. Get this, during the last election campaign, all Conservative candidates campaigned on a promise to lift the GST during the holiday season. And what did they do last week when presented with the opportunity to follow through on that promise? Well, guess what? They broke their promise to Canadians by voting against a GST break over the holidays. I don't know what the leader of the opposition is planning on serving at Christmas dinner, but I sure hope it's better than the stale slogans and horrendous hypocrisy that he's been serving up in this.
The honourable member for Nunavut.
Here is how a government question is asked. Hunters and trappers in Nunavut rely on their boats to feed their families. 3 years ago, this government promised a small craft harbor for Arctic Bay. 3 years later, this government has not delivered. This harbor would allow more safe hunting and help keep our communities safe from threats in the Arctic. I have fought for this project, and this Liberal government is still ignoring my community. With the government's new Arctic foreign policy released today, will the Liberals finally fund this important project?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Fisheries, Oceans and Canadian Coast Guard.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and it is so refreshing today to hear an actual question presented to the government. I want to thank the member for doing so. I will say this, that when it comes to small craft harbors, it's the lifeblood of every community in terms of economic development, in terms of social development. And I look forward, I want to learn more about the particular question at hand, and I'm committed to meeting the member, as we all should do, in a collegial way, in a clear way, and in an unoffensive way, like we're hearing today.
Order, 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 order. The Honourable Member for South Shore, St. Margaret's, and the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, I ask them to please behave. The Honourable Member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I put the
Honourable Member just muted herself, I believe. Okay, the Honourable Member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question today is that as we see the days dwindling to when we can actually pass legislation, my constituents are particularly concerned with Bill C-33. It's on rail safety and management of marine issues around our ports. It was first introduced 2 ministers of transportation ago, more than 2 years ago, when the minister was from the member from Mississauga Arundel. Can the government update us? We've finished clause by clause. We're waiting for report stage. When will this bill come back so we can at least get it to the Senate, where we have half a hope of not losing years' worth of work?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Actually, I agree with the member. We have been in the House here for over a month now, bogged down by the Conservatives with respect to their privilege motion. Once we can get by that, we can get back to the order of business here in the House, something that most, if not all, members are looking forward to. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I'll do the point of order in a minute. So 2 things. First, following discussions among representatives of all parties in the House, I understand that there is an agreement to observe a moment of silence. J'invite les députés à se lever.
I would like to invite MPs to stand up and observe a minute of silence in memory of the victims of the tragic event that happened 35 years ago at École Polytechnique in Montréal.
Before I get to the point of order as well, I want to apologize to the Honourable Member for Miramichi-Grand Lake. I asked him to repose his question. The first time I couldn't hear his question completely because of the fact that there was a lot of noise, and I was also having a conversation with the clerk on checking on something. And so the second time he did come in I did offer him the opportunity to re-ask the question, and during that time he neglected to put the question and made a comment instead. And I think it's all in the hype of what happens here in the House, and I do apologize for that. And so I just want to say, when it comes to the questions and comments, it's really important to ensure that it does have to do with the administration of the government, and that it's incumbent upon all members to not make so much noise so that we can hear everything that is being said. So I do apologize to the honourable member for Miramichi Grand Lake. Sorry, I had one more point of order before that. The honourable member for the honourable government deputy House leader.
Thank you.
Or is it the whip today?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm rising on a point of order coming out of question period, and we are continuing to see this trend of questions that, or preamble, and 99% of a question being on a subject not related to government business, and then finally the end of the question somehow asks the government a question. The chair has made it clear in the past that the proper way in which a question needs to be asked is to, at the very least, start the question by talking about some form of government business and concluding the question the same way. I believe that the chair has set a precedent, and you have also set a precedent, and you've actually indicated today through your words, sitting in the chair, you represent the chair, and any decisions moving forward, have indicated that you will remove questions from individuals and cut them off. I think that it is incumbent upon the chair, and I know that it can be challenging to hear what's going on with some of the noise in here, but I think it is incumbent upon the chair to listen to what's going on and stop a question if it is clear that the content of the question has nothing to do with government business. Government business is what the government is doing. Asking the government to call an election is not government business. So I would ask, Madam Chair, even if you were somehow to accept the fact that asking the government to call an election is government business, when you have 99% of leading up to that have nothing to do with the government, but instead are asking questions of the opposing parties, that you have to do something in order to get the House back in order. That might be stopping the question, and it might be removing future questions. I would just in conclusion, before I get cut off, Madam Speaker, I just want to say that the question that they keep asking is about something that is going to happen on Monday. It is very important to recognize that I think it's fair to say that throughout question period on Monday, the same questions are going to be answered because it's after question period. So please give this consideration over the weekend so that you can handle it appropriately on Monday.
Is this on the same point of order? The Honourable Official Opposition Deputy Whip.
Well, that's the height of hypocrisy, Madam Speaker. We have the honourable member complaining about those types of questions when, as a matter of fact, the member from St. John Rossaway actually asked the majority of his question about the leader of the official opposition, and then had a very small tie back to the administration of government at the very last comments, as I'm being heckled by the member now recanting his initial comments. Secondly, Madam Speaker, in terms of a question about calling the election, there is only one group of people in this House that arbitrarily can decide on the timing of an election. It is the government. Right. It is the administration. It's an action of the administration of government to determine if or not they ask Governor General for an election. Now, the House collectively can make a determination on forcing the government to go to an election, but the Prime Minister has the capacity and the prerogative to go to the Governor General, call an election, and, Madam Speaker, that's what we're calling for.
I have another point of order. The Honourable Member Cowichan Malahat Langford, and then I'll come back.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm raising a point of order with regards to the proceedings of the Standing Committee on Health back in October. As the House records will show, on October 3rd, 10th, and 24th, there were 3 meetings at that Standing Committee that were dealing with the subject matter of Bill C-277, an act to establish a national strategy on brain injuries. That bill was referred to the committee at second reading on June the 12th, and it was reported back to the House on October 28th, again with unanimous support. So because of those proceedings, Madam Speaker, I would ask for unanimous consent for the following motion, that notwithstanding any standing order or...
I'm sorry, I already hear some no's. I don't have a point... sorry, I do have a point of order here. The Honourable Member for Charles Wood, St. James, Assiniboia, Headingley.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. On this matter of ruling questions out of order because they're not to do with government business, which you did during question period, there was one particular instance where you ruled one of our questions out of order, but then recognized the government minister to respond to a question that you had ruled out of order. So I question this practice, and I'd like you to explain why it's appropriate to allow a government minister to respond to a question that you've actually ruled is not in order.
I want to see if I have any other points of order. Again, we have one more on this specific issue, and then we can get to other points of order after. So the honourable member for Cowichan Malahat Langford on this specific issue as well?
Well, Madam Speaker,
his previous one wasn't, so I just was wondering.
It was just like on the previous one, because like as I was sitting down, I just need some clarification from the chair, because as I was sitting down, I missed something. Was it the Conservatives that said no to that unanimous consent for the brain injury community? Because I think they really want to know.
Right, and there's no points of order there's no points of clarification on that point of order. The honourable member for Kelowna Lake Country.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just to add to that point of order about questions during question period, I think it would be a really challenging precedent to not allow members to be able to use whatever preamble they have as they get to their question. The question is at the very end, and to cut off members midway, I think does not. It really impedes on the member from being able to even get to their question. So I don't think that that's really the way to go. And we've had many instances in this House. I know that we've had NDP members that have asked many questions related to provincial premiers. I mean, we've seen a lot of that in this House, and so I think going down this way in this manner would create a lot of difficulty. And I just want you to consider that members should be allowed to freely state what is important to them and what they're hearing from their constituents, and then get to the question. And if in fact we've seen it where a member of the government stands up to answer a question, that's their prerogative. That's their prerogative if they choose to answer it, whether or not it's business of the House or not. So I'd just like you to consider that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
The honourable for New Westminster Burnaby is writing on the same point of order.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. As you know, and the ruling was very, very clear from the former Speaker, the member from Regina Capel, during the Harper regime, every single one of those Conservative questions would have been ruled out of order. In fact, after two sentences, those Conservative members would have been asked to step down. So these are previous rulings. You have been much more flexible in actually giving them a second chance. The reality is, previous Speaker's ruling, including the Conservative...
Order, I can't hear the point of order because some individuals who had the opportunity, some members who had the opportunity to rise on the point of order are not being very, or should I say, they're being a little bit unruly right now. So I would just ask members to please wait if they wish to add anything. The honourable member for New Westminster Burnaby.
So the jurisprudence is very clear. You have the right and you have the tools to cut this mockery of question period off immediately. Not a single one of these Conservative questions would have stand. And now I want to reference the standing orders because they are extremely important. Numerous standing orders were violated during question period by Conservative members of Parliament. So I would ask through you, Madam Speaker, to the Conservative whip, to, number one, ask his members to actually read the standing orders because that's actually an important part of their work, and ensure that when members from the Conservative Party come to question period, they actually understand the rules of order and will respect the rules of this Parliament and stop making a mockery of the House of Commons.
Timmins James Bay has also a point of order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think the question that is at issue here is that Parliament and question period is a very partisan moment. This is the moment when the daily shots at government take place. So there is leeway. However, it's about the fair application by the chair of the abuse of question period. And I will say the Speaker has, when he has ruled that we have not asked something on government business, the question is shut down. We aren't given 3 and 4 opportunities to repeat the same question to get it on the record. It is shut down. So if the Speaker rules that a question is not on government business, it's unfair to the rest of us
who have just been told, no, your question is not on government business, sit down, that's the end of it, to allow Conservatives to repeat and repeat and repeat, because I am very concerned, Speaker, and you know, you've heard my frustration, that there is a very unfair application in this House because of the intimidation tactics of the Conservatives. When we get up on points of order, we're regularly shut down quickly. Conservatives can speak on as long as they want, and it allows for a gaslighting in the House. So what we are asking for is a fair application. If you rule as chair that something is not government business, that is your decision, fair play. But to allow the Conservatives to keep going and going and going because of the intimidation that they do when shouting and trying to undermine Parliament, it makes it very difficult for the rest of us to be willing to go along with the politeness of the House.
The Honourable for South Shore St. Margaret's, this is the last point of order I will hear on this. The issue here is the thing is that a lot of what is being said is just being repeated, first of all. Second of all, the Honourable the Speaker of the House himself did indicate that he would be coming back to the House about this, and it was, and so there is something that's coming forthwith, but I think that it makes it very, very difficult for the speakers to be able to be consistent, given how the questions are being brought forward. We take members for what they are planning to bring forward, and as I've indicated, it's very difficult, as what happened today to the Honourable Member for Miramichi-Grand Lake, to really hear what is being said when so many people are weighing in on what is being said. So I just want to say that I think that it's incumbent upon everyone to be respectful of that, of the decisions of what is being said and of the decisions of the chairs. And so we are doing our best to try to manage the House, and it's very difficult to do that when you know, the last piece in the question is related to the government administration where nothing else is, and that is what's raising the issues in the House where we can't hear what is being said. So the Honourable for South Shore St. Margaret's.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On that same point of order, I would add that I think, as my colleague stated, that the lead up and part of a question in question period is an important setup for the question, and for the NDP to suggest that the Speaker should start censoring and stopping a question before the member gets to ask it based on the fact that they don't like the opening sentence that may offend that member, I think is frankly, it's a breach of a member's privilege in terms of their ability to speak on behalf of their constituents in this House.
Sorry, I have another point of order here. The Honourable Member for the Honourable, I just want to see here if it's, I prefer to, okay. So the Honourable Member for Stormont, Dundas, South Glengarry. I was just checking to see if he had a title because I usually try to make sure I recognize them by their other titles within their ministerial or...
Well, I was going to say it's a great title to be the Member of Parliament for Stormont, Dundas, South Glengarry, one I have proudly. I just want